Hey guys, I want to read The Hobbit with you guys. I figured this could be a good way for us to connect, and maybe when I get back, we'll be close to being able to watch the second movie. So I'm going to try to do this every day and commit to this. But I did want to say that Mommy was telling me how helpful everyone was last night, and I just want to say thank you for that. So anything you guys can do, especially on school nights, to help with like cleaning up lunch boxes, making lunches, helping everyone get out the door and clean up, is very helpful. And I'm just thankful that you guys did that last night. Hope you guys can continue it. But on to The Hobbit. I don't remember exactly where we were. We have a little tab here marked in between some of the riddles that Bilbo was saying. I think that's probably right around where we were, so I'll just kind of back up a little bit. And we'll go into one of the riddles. "All right," said Bilbo, not daring to disagree and nearly bursting his brain to think of riddles that could save him from being eaten. "30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still." That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. It was rather an old one, too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. "Chestnuts, chestnuts," he hissed. "Teeth, teeth, my precious, but we has only 6. Then he asked a second. "Voiceless it carries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mouthless mutters." "Half a moment," cried Bilbo, who was still thinking uncomfortably about eating. Unfortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before, and getting his wits back, he thought of the answer. Here, I'll show you guys the... "Voiceless it cries, wingless it flutters, toothless it bites, mouthless it mutters." The wind. "Wind, wind, of course," he said, and he was so pleased that he made one up on the spot. "This'll puzzle the nasty little underground creature," he thought. "An eye in a blue face saw an eye in a green face. The eye is like this eye," said the first eye, "but in low place, not in high place," said Gollum. He had been underground a long, long time, and was forgetting this sort of thing. But just as Bilbo was beginning to hope that the wretch would not be able to answer, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages and ages before, when he lived with his grandmother in a hole in a bank by the river. "My precious," he said. "Suns on the daisies, it means, it does." But these ordinary, above-ground, everyday sort of riddles were tiring for him. Also, they reminded him of days when he had been less lonely and sneaky and nasty. That put him out of temper. What is more, they made him hungry. So this time he tried something a bit more difficult and more unpleasant. "It cannot be seen, cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be smelt. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first and follows after, ends life and kills laughter." Unfortunately for Gollum, Bilbo had heard this sort of thing before, and the answer was around him anyway. "Dark," he said, without even scratching his eye or putting on his thinking cap. "A box without hinges, key or lid, yet gold and treasure inside is hid." He asked to gain time until he could think of a really, really hard one. This he thought as dreadfully easy chestnut, though he had not asked in the usual words. But it proved a nasty poser for Gollum. He hissed to himself, still did not answer. He whispered and spluttered. After some, while becoming impatient, "Well, what is it?" he said. "The answer's not a kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noise you are making." "Give us a chance," said, "Let it give us a chance," my precious. Well, said Bilbo after giving a long chance. What about your guess? But suddenly Gollum remembered thieving from nests long ago and sitting under the river bank, teaching his grandmother to suck. Eggs, he said. Eggs it is. Then he asked, alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in, mail never clinking. He also, in his turn, thought this was a dreadfully easy one, because he was always thinking of the answer, but he could not remember anything better at the moment. He was flustered by the egg question. All the same, it was a poser for poor Bilbo, who'd never heard anything to do with the water if he could help it. I imagine you know the answer, of course, or can guess it as easy as winking, since you are sitting comfortably at home, and have not the danger of being eaten to disturb your thinking. Bilbo sat and cleared his throat once or twice, but no answer came. Can you guys think about it? Alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in mail, never clinking. After a while, Gollum began to hiss with pleasure to himself. It is nice, my preciouses. It is juicy. It is scrumptiously scrunchable. He began to peer at Bilbo out of the darkness. Half a moment, said the Hobbit, shivering. I gave you a good long chance just now. It must make haste, said Gollum, beginning to climb out of his boat onto the shore to get to Bilbo. But when he put his long, webby foot on the water, a fish jumped out in fright and fell on Bilbo's toes. Ugh, he said. It is cold and clammy. And so he guessed, fish, he cried. Fish, it's a fish. Gollum was dreadfully disappointed, but Bilbo asked another riddle, as quick as he could, so that Gollum had to get back into his boat and think. No legs lay on one leg, 2 legs sat near, on 3 legs, 4 legs got some. That's weird. No legs lay on one leg, 2 legs sat near, on 3 legs, 4 legs got some. I don't think I get this, guys. Anyways, it was not really the right time for this riddle, but Bilbo was in a hurry. Gollum might have had some trouble guessing it, as he was asked it at another time. As it was, thinking of fish, no legs, was not so very difficult, and after that the rest was easy. Fish on a little table, man at table sitting on a stool, the cat has the bones, of course, is the answer, and Gollum soon gave it. Then he thought the time had come to ask something hard and horrible. This is what he said. This thing all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, and flowers, gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to a meal, slays king, ruins town, and beats high mountain down. Poor Bilbo sat in the dark thinking of all the horrible names of all the giants and ogres he had ever told in tales, but not one of them had done all of these things. He had a feeling that the answer was quite different, and he ought to know it, but he could not think of it. He began to get frightened, and that is bad for thinking. Gollum began to get out of his boat. He flapped into the water and paddled to the bank. Bilbo could see his eyes coming towards him. His tongue seemed to stick in his mouth. He wanted to shout, "Give me more time! Give me more time!" But all that came out was a sudden squeal was, "Time! Time!" Bilbo was saved by pure luck, for that, of course, was the answer. Let's think about that, guys. This thing all things devour, so time can devour everything, I guess. Birds, beasts, trees, and flowers, yep, they all wither away and die. Gnaws on iron, bites on steel, yep. Grinds hard stones to a meal, yeah. Slays kings, ruins towns, and beats high mountains, yeah. I guess after time all those things can get withered away. That's true. Alright. Gollum was disappointed once more, and now he was getting angry, and also tired of the game. It had made him very hungry indeed. This time, he did not go back to the boat. He sat down in the dark by Bilbo. That made the Hobbit most dreadfully uncomfortable, and scattered his wits. "It's got to ask us a question, my preciouses. Yes. Just one more question to guess, yes, said Gollum. But Bilbo simply could not think of any question that was nasty, wet, cold thing next to him, and pawing and poking him. He scratched himself and pinched himself. Still, he could ask, not thinking of anything. Ask us, said Gollum. Bilbo pinched himself and slapped himself. He gripped on his little sword. He even felt his pocket with his other hand. There, he found the ring he had picked up on the passage and forgotten about. What have I got in my pocket? He said aloud. He was thinking to himself, but Gollum thought it was a riddle, and he was frightfully upset. Not fair, he hissed. It isn't fair, my precious. Is it, to ask what it's got in his nasty little pocketses? Bilbo, seeing what had happened and having nothing better to ask, stuck to his question. What have I got in my pocket? He said louder. Hissed Gollum. You must give us 3 guesses, my precious, 3 guesses. Very well, guess away, said Bilbo. Handses, said Gollum. Wrong, said Bilbo, who had luckily just taken his hands out again. Guess again, said Gollum, more upset than ever. He thought of all the things he kept in his own pockets. Fish bones, goblin's teeth, wet shells, a bit of bat wing, a sharp stone to sharpen his fangs on, and other nasty things. He tried to think of what other people kept in their pockets. Knife, he said at last. Wrong, said Bilbo, who had lost his some time ago. Last guess. Now Gollum was in a much worse state than when Bilbo had asked him the egg question. He hissed and spluttered and rocketed himself back and forth, slapped his feet on the floor, wriggled and squirmed, but still he did not dare to waste his last breath. Come on, said Bilbo. I'm waiting. He tried to sound bold and cheerful, but he did not feel at all sure how the game was going to end, whether Gollum guessed right or not. Time's up, he said. String, or nothing, shrieked Gollum, which was not quite fair, working in 2 guesses at once. Both wrong, cried Bilbo, very much relieved. And he jumped at once to his feet, put his back to the nearest wall, and held out his little sword. He knew, of course, that the riddle game was sacred and of immense antiquity, and even wicked creatures were afraid to cheat when they played at it. But he felt he could not trust this slimy thing to keep any promise at a pinch. Any excuse would do for him to slide out of it. And after all, that last question had not been a genuine riddle according to the ancient laws. But at any rate, Gollum did not attack him